Awaken your spirit chosen ones. When the room goes silent after you move, it means you just did something nobody was prepared for. That's exactly the energy surrounding you right now. This strange, electric tension in the air, like everyone is whispering but nobody has the vocabulary to describe what they just witnessed. It's almost funny because half the people talking don't even know what they're talking about. They're just filling the silence with theories so wild they could qualify for a Netflix conspiracy documentary. But that's the thing about sudden transformation. It doesn't ask for permission, and it definitely doesn't arrive with a user manual. Here's a fact most people overlook. The human brain is wired to panic when it can't predict someone's next move, even more than when it senses danger. That's why everyone is acting like you just broke some invisible universal law. You didn't do something wrong. You did something unexpected, and unexpected is the enemy of small minds that rely on routine to feel safe. Your shift wasn't loud, but it was seismic. It didn't shake the ground, it shook their perceptions. You made a move so clean, so unapologetically aligned with who you've become, that people can't decide whether to applaud you or report you to the what is going on department. And let's be honest, some folks are only confused because your glow-up came without warning labels. There was no trailer, no teaser, no season preview. You just appeared upgraded, and now they're scrambling like someone changed the TV channel without using the remote. So yes, everyone's talking. They're trying to decode you like you're a leaked classified file with half the pages missing. They can't explain what you did because it didn't fit the script they wrote for you. And the suspense they're drowning in. That's their punishment for underestimating the plot twist that is you. Number 1. People aren't confused by what you did. They're terrified because it didn't match the version of you they invented. What most people don't realize is that the confusion they feel isn't about your actions themselves. It's about the version of you they've been holding in their minds for years. Everyone around you has a story about who you are. It's convenient, easy, and safe for them to label you. Maybe they see you as quiet, predictable, or even harmless. Maybe they built their own sense of security around your limitations, assuming you would never break certain boundaries or exceed certain expectations. And then you did something that completely shattered that narrative. That's when terror creeps in. Not fear of the action itself, but fear of the fact that the person they thought they understood doesn't exist in the same way anymore. When you act in a way that defies the image people have of you, it's like the foundation under them collapses. Suddenly they realize they were never interacting with the real you. They were interacting with a mental construct they created, because it was easier than understanding the complexity of who you truly are. And now that construct is gone. What they thought they knew is obsolete, and the new version of you is too advanced, too sharp, too real for them to process. That's why their reactions are extreme. They talk, they gossip, they exaggerate, and sometimes they try to rationalize what you did in ways that make sense to their limited perspective. The truth is brutal. People are more comfortable fearing someone than respecting someone they don't understand. They'd rather whisper, judge, and speculate than confront the idea that you simply evolved beyond the constraints they imposed on you. Their terror comes from realizing they no longer hold any control over your story. They're scrambling because the version of you that served their assumptions is gone, replaced with someone unpredictable, unapologetic, and entirely self-directed. The confusion isn't a reflection of your actions. It's a reflection of their inability to reconcile the difference between the person they imagined and the person you've become. And that is a kind of power most will never understand. Number 2, your growth didn't follow their timeline, and that's why they can't explain it. People are wired to measure progress in neat, predictable steps. They expect life to happen in a linear way, with milestones that fit into their limited understanding of how the world works. That's why when you leap ahead, When you evolve faster than anyone around you can track, they don't see growth, they see chaos. Your transformation didn't fit their calendar, their rules, or their expectations, and that is deeply unsettling. They are trying to make sense of something that refuses to be contained, and the harder they try, the more their confusion, and sometimes fear, grows. The problem isn't what you did, it's how you did it. You didn't follow the path they had anticipated. You didn't announce each step, ask for approval, or slow down to make them comfortable. You simply advanced, and advancement, when sudden and undeniable, is threatening. It forces people to confront the fact that their own timelines, their own pace, and their assumptions about what is normal are now irrelevant. They can't explain it because they've been conditioned to expect linearity, and you just broke the rules without a second thought. This is why people scramble to talk about you, label you, or speculate wildly. Their mental frameworks are collapsing under the weight of your acceleration. They try to fit you into boxes that no longer exist, and the harder they push, the more obvious it becomes that you are operating on a level they haven't reached. You didn't just move ahead, you redefined what forward looks like, and that alone is enough to make people uncomfortable. At its core, your unexpected growth exposes the stagnation in others. It highlights the difference between those who evolve quietly, deliberately, and relentlessly, and those who are stuck measuring life in increments they can understand. Their inability to explain you is not a failure on your part. It's proof that you've stepped into a space most people aren't willing or able to enter. You moved ahead on your own terms, and that independence, that unapologetic self-direction, is what leaves them speechless, scrambling, and ultimately forced to acknowledge your ascent, even if they can't articulate it. Number 3, you exposed the quiet truth. Many people only understand you when you stay small. One of the most unsettling things for people around you is realizing that their understanding of you was never real. It only existed while you stayed within the boundaries they set. They were comfortable with a version of you that fit neatly into their expectations, a version that was small, predictable, and easy to manage. Your sudden shift, your expansion, your unapologetic growth exposed a truth that most would rather ignore. People often only engage with others as long as they can control or contain them. When you step out of that box, when you refuse to stay small, the illusions they built around you crumble, and that's where panic sets in. This reaction is brutally honest, and it reveals a lot about human nature. People rarely celebrate growth if it threatens their narrative or their sense of security. They want you visible, but only on their terms. They want you present, but only within the limits they find convenient. Your transformation confronts them with their own reliance on your limitations, and that confrontation feels like a betrayal to them, even though it's nothing more than your refusal to remain confined. They thought they knew you, but the version of you they thought existed only served them, not the truth of who you are. The more you rise, the more evident it becomes that their interest in you was conditional. They didn't care about your full potential. They cared about the version of you that was safe, manageable, and predictable. Now, as you continue to expand, their conversations, gossip, and confusion are attempts to rationalize what they can't control. They scramble to redefine their understanding because the person they relied on for their comfort has outgrown the framework they imposed. Your growth exposes not only their limitations, but their intentions. It forces them to confront that they were never truly seeing you. They were seeing what they wanted to see. That revelation is uncomfortable, unsettling, and even a little frightening for them, which is why their confusion is so loud. Meanwhile, you continue moving forward, unbound, unapologetic, and undeniable, showing that true understanding only exists for those willing to witness the entirety of who you are, not just the version that fits their comfort zone. Number 4. What you did wasn't loud. It was precise, and precision is more disruptive than noise. Most people are accustomed to chaos. They equate disruption with noise, drama, and overreaction. They expect big gestures, loud confrontations, or exaggerated displays to signal change or power. What they are completely unprepared for is subtlety executed with precision, because precision exposes weaknesses without creating the distraction of spectacle. That's exactly what you did. Your actions weren't about shouting or proving yourself to anyone. They were about hitting the exact mark you intended, and that is far more unsettling than any performance could ever be. Precision forces people to pay attention. It doesn't leave room for interpretation or debate in the usual sense because it doesn't flail or stumble. Every move, every decision, every step you took was intentional, and that intention is impossible to ignore. While others are busy making noise to cover up uncertainty, you simply acted with clarity and exactness. This kind of disruption is disarming. It doesn't scream for attention. It demands it silently. And because people are so used to chaos being the language of power or change, your quiet, exact impact feels like it defies logic. They don't know how to process it, so they talk about it instead. The beauty of precision is that it leaves nothing for others to embellish or misrepresent easily. You stripped away all the fluff and the theatrics, leaving only results, clarity, and undeniable effect. That scares people more than any loud, clumsy attempt at disruption, because it exposes how much of what they rely on, control, assumptions, or narratives, is fragile. It's a reminder that substance always outlasts performance, and people who can't keep up are left scrambling to make sense of something they can't manipulate. Your moves were surgical. They weren't meant to impress, intimidate, or entertain. They were meant to shift reality, and that shift was undeniable. The confusion, the chatter, the speculation, all of it comes from witnessing power expressed without the usual fanfare. Precision doesn't ask for approval. It doesn't negotiate. It simply exists, and its impact is felt, whether people understand it or not. That is why what you did resonates far deeper than anything loud could ever achieve. Number 5. They're trying to explain you. Using old language that no longer fits the person you've become. One of the most frustrating and powerful realities of sudden transformation is that the people around you are stuck speaking a language that no longer applies. They learned to understand you through patterns, words, habits, and reactions that used to define you. Every gesture they observed, every decision they interpreted, every moment they relied on for context was catalogued in their minds. But you didn't stay there. You evolved, and in doing so, you left their vocabulary behind. Their explanations, their judgments, their narratives are all outdated because they belong to a version of you that no longer exists. This creates a unique kind of tension. People scramble to make sense of what they see, but every attempt falls short. They reach for phrases, comparisons, and assumptions that once worked and realize none of them fit anymore. Your actions look like anomalies because their frameworks are obsolete. You moved beyond the old definitions, and that makes the ordinary extraordinary, the predictable unpredictable, and the explainable inexplicable. It's not that your choices are inherently confusing, it's that the lens through which others try to interpret you has broken. That's why there's so much chatter, speculation, and bewilderment surrounding you. People are trying to file you into categories that vanished the moment you stepped outside their expectations. Their discomfort comes from confronting the fact that their mental models, what they thought they understood, are no longer useful. They don't realize that what they call confusion is actually their inability to evolve alongside you. Your transformation is a reminder that language and understanding are only effective when they adapt to reality. You didn't change just to shock or unsettle. You changed because your growth demanded it. The reactions of others, the attempts to label you, and the theories they create are all reflections of their own limitations, not yours. You've moved into a space that requires a new vocabulary, a new level of comprehension, and a willingness to see beyond old versions of yourself. And until they catch up, the mystery surrounding your evolution will remain, making your presence far more powerful than any explanation could ever convey. Number 6. You broke an unspoken rule. You changed without asking for permission. There's an unspoken contract people expect you to follow without ever stating it. Evolve only when it's convenient for them, grow only to the degree they can handle, and always check in before stepping into a space that might challenge their assumptions. You didn't do that. You didn't ask for approval, you didn't seek validation, and you didn't wait for their comfort zone to expand. You simply changed, and that's why their reactions are so intense. The shock they express isn't about what you did. It's about the audacity of doing it without their permission. This is where the real discomfort lies. People are accustomed to monitoring, controlling, or at least predicting the growth of those around them. They thrive on the illusion that they have some influence over your limits, that your boundaries and potential are negotiable. When you act outside of that invisible agreement, you expose a truth they don't want to face. Your life belongs to you, and no one else gets a vote. That realization triggers confusion, gossip, and sometimes hostility, because your independence highlights their need to dominate narratives that aren't theirs to control. By changing without asking, you've also illuminated the weakness of their assumptions. They thought they had time to prepare, to shape, or to contain you, but you proved that true evolution doesn't wait. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't ask for consent from spectators or critics. It simply happens. That is what makes your shift so disorienting. They can't process a reality where someone evolves purely on their own terms, because it forces them to confront their own inertia and dependence on predictable structures. Breaking this unspoken rule doesn't make you reckless or inconsiderate. It makes you sovereign. You chose alignment over approval, action over consultation, and authenticity over compliance. The chaos it creates around you isn't a reflection of your mistake. It's a reflection of the fragile frameworks others built around your past. You didn't just change, you rewrote the expectations of what was acceptable, and that defiance of invisible authority is exactly why your impact is unforgettable, undeniable, and for many, impossible to explain. Number 7. Your move highlighted their stagnation, and that's the real reason for the noise. When you take action, especially the kind that defies expectation, it does more than just move you forward. It shines a light on everyone else around you who isn't moving. Your growth, your clarity, and your decisiveness create a mirror for those who have been stuck in routines, excuses, or comfort zones. They don't talk about you because of what you did. They talk about you because it exposes what they haven't done. That exposure makes them uneasy, defensive, and sometimes even bitter, because your momentum is a quiet accusation of their inertia. People are often uncomfortable with change, not because they fear the unknown, but because it forces them to confront their own lack of progress. Your leap forward acts like a spotlight on their stagnation. Every move you make reminds them that they've been settling, waiting, or hesitating, and that realization stings more than any criticism you could receive. Their noise, their speculation, and their confusion are attempts to redirect attention away from the uncomfortable truth. They are no longer the standard, and you are outpacing them in ways they never expected. What makes your situation so disruptive is that your advancement wasn't just visible, it was undeniable. You didn't merely take steps forward, you transformed in a way that made their stillness obvious. That contrast between action and inaction amplifies every reaction. People try to rationalize, gossip, or even create narratives about you, but deep down, they know the truth. Their chatter is about their own failure to evolve. They are scrambling not because they misunderstand you, but because your progress highlights their inability or unwillingness to follow suit. Your growth becomes a silent challenge, a reminder that life isn't a waiting game for permission or alignment. It's a personal journey that rewards those who move while others hesitate. The confusion around you isn't about your actions. It's about the reflection your actions cast. You've set a pace that few can match, and that exposure, that contrast, is what triggers the noise, the whispers, and the attempts to explain the unexplainable. In reality, the truth is simple. You moved, they didn't, and the difference speaks louder than any words ever could. Number 8. Your action revealed hidden power dynamics. They thought you were too blind to see. When you make a move that challenges expectations, it doesn't just affect you, it shakes the invisible structures around you. There are always dynamics in play, unspoken hierarchies and subtle controls that govern relationships, workplaces, and social circles. Most people assume those dynamics are invisible to those they monitor, that you're unaware of the strings they've been quietly pulling. But when you act decisively, strategically, and without hesitation, you reveal that you've seen the game all along. That's when the panic starts. Your actions expose the truth. The control others thought they had was never as absolute as they believed. Suddenly, the quiet balance they relied on, the one where they could manipulate narratives, steer outcomes, and keep you contained, is disrupted. Their surprise isn't about your courage or skill. It's about the realization that you were observing, understanding, and ultimately outmaneuvering them without anyone noticing. That level of awareness is disarming, because it undermines the illusion that power is theirs alone. People hate being reminded of the control they never truly possessed. When they act like they're confused or shocked, it's not a reflection of your action itself. It's a reflection of their ego being confronted. They've built a world where influence is carefully measured and carefully maintained, and your sudden move throws that entire system into question. You didn't just act. You illuminated the invisible hierarchy, showing everyone where assumptions had failed, where authority was fragile, and where their confidence was based on nothing more than your silence. This exposure forces people to scramble, explain, and gossip, because they can't publicly admit that their perceived control has been challenged. Your power lies not in noise, performance, or even visibility. It lies in the clarity of your insight, the decisiveness of your action, and the quiet knowledge that you understood the game all along. They talk, speculate, and panic because the truth is undeniable. You were never blind, you were never powerless, and the structures they relied on are weaker than they imagined. Your move didn't just change your position, it changed the rules, the perception, and the balance of power itself. Number 9, they can't explain what you did because they didn't see the internal work, only the external impact. People are quick to react to results, but they rarely consider the unseen effort behind them. What you did didn't just happen overnight. It was the product of countless hours of thought, reflection, struggle, and silent preparation. Most observers only see the outcome, the shift, the change, the undeniable result that defies explanation. Because they don't have access to the internal work, the late nights, the mental battles, the deliberate choices, they scramble to make sense of what seems impossible. Their confusion is rooted in ignorance, not in the reality of your actions. The truth is, transformation looks effortless to those who don't do the work. They see the movement, but not the discipline. They see the leap, but not the groundwork. That disparity is what makes your actions so bewildering. They're trying to explain something they can't trace, something they can't replicate, and something they never witnessed being built. Their attempts to rationalize are like trying to describe a masterful painting after only glancing at the brushstrokes. They miss the depth, the patience, and the deliberate layering that made it possible. Your work was silent, precise, and deeply personal. You didn't need applause, recognition, or validation, and that's what makes it invisible to the casual observer. People can't process the magnitude of results that come from quiet consistency because it contradicts their narrative of effort and reward. They expect chaos, noise, or showmanship, not the kind of disciplined, unseen labor that produces real impact. Because they focus only on the surface, they confuse brilliance for luck or accident. They speculate, gossip, and overanalyze, trying to fill in gaps with theories that rarely approach the truth. Meanwhile, you've been quietly stacking your wins, refining your strategy, and evolving in ways that they can't measure or predict. Their confusion is inevitable. It's the natural reaction of those trying to decode a process they never witnessed. Your internal work is your power, and the fact that it leaves others scrambling for explanations only proves how far ahead you've moved while the world was still staring at the result. Number 10. You didn't just break patterns, you broke their predictability algorithm. People are comfortable when they can predict how others will behave. It's not about trust or respect. It's about control, habit, and mental shortcuts that make the world feel manageable. Everyone around you had a version of you mapped out, a formula they could rely on to anticipate your reactions, your decisions, and your boundaries. That formula gave them a sense of stability, a way to navigate interactions without challenge. Then you acted, and suddenly the algorithm failed. You didn't just step outside their expectations, you rewrote the rules entirely, leaving them scrambling to process what just happened. When predictability collapses, confusion and fear follow. People don't panic because your move was radical or even difficult. They panic because it defies their internal logic. They've spent time, energy, and mental resources creating a version of you that fits neatly into their understanding, and now that structure has collapsed. Every assumption they held about your limits, your intentions, and your patterns is suddenly invalid. They try to reconstruct their understanding, but it's like coding software without access to the original source. They keep hitting errors because the system they trusted no longer exists. Breaking predictability exposes more than your actions. It exposes their reliance on control. The chatter, speculation, and overanalysis around you are symptoms of their discomfort. They are scrambling not just to explain you, but to regain a sense of order in a world that suddenly feels unpredictable. Your clarity, your alignment, and your decisiveness highlight the fragility of the mental models others relied on for security. Your move is a statement. You cannot be reduced to patterns or scripts. You operate on awareness, intention, and timing that only you control. While others are busy trying to debug their assumptions, you've already advanced, leaving the noise behind. Their confusion isn't proof of your failure. It's proof of your power. By breaking their predictability algorithm, you've claimed space that cannot be anticipated, controlled, or replicated, and that space is where true transformation begins. Number 11. Your shift exposed. Who was watching you for growth and who was watching you for failure? One of the most revealing aspects of transformation is the way it separates observers into distinct categories without any effort on your part. When you evolve, some people are genuinely attentive to your growth. They celebrate your progress, adapt alongside you, and recognize the work it took to get there. Others are watching with a different lens entirely. They're not looking at what you can become. They're looking for missteps, flaws, or moments they can twist into evidence that confirms their judgment. Your shift exposes these distinctions in the most undeniable way. This is why reactions to your progress are so intense. The ones who see your growth with respect adjust quietly, maybe even admire from the background, but they don't need to make noise because they understand the value of alignment and timing. The ones who are invested in your failure, however, scramble to fill the void with chatter, speculation, and rumor. They panic not because they fear your success, but because your success reflects their inability or unwillingness to act similarly in their own lives. Their focus is projection, not understanding. Your evolution becomes a spotlight, illuminating not just what you've achieved, but who the people around you really are. It cuts through pretenses, filters out opportunism, and reveals intention with brutal clarity. The noise, confusion, and attempts to explain what you did are rarely about you. They're about the discomfort of being confronted by the contrast between your momentum and their stagnation. In this way, your shift isn't just about personal progress. It's a test that reveals loyalties, intentions, and priorities. It uncovers who values growth for its own sake and who measures others against their own insecurities. And while some may try to disguise their motives behind commentary or speculation, the truth is always visible. Your alignment separates the watchers who truly support from the ones who merely observe with judgment. In exposing this, you gain more than clarity about yourself. You gain clarity about the space around you, who belongs, and who was never meant to be part of your journey forward. Number 12. They can't explain what you did because they secretly wanted to do it themselves, but never had the courage. One of the most frustrating yet revealing truths about people's reactions to your actions is that much of their confusion and chatter comes from a hidden place of envy and unfulfilled desire. They can't explain what you did not because it was incomprehensible, but because it confronts them with their own inaction. Deep down, many of the people watching you have thought about taking bold steps, breaking free from limitations, or making radical changes in their lives, but they never had the courage. Your move forces them to face a truth they've long avoided. They've been holding themselves back. When someone acts in a way they secretly wished they could, it creates a cognitive dissonance that is uncomfortable, often expressed as gossip, speculation, or frantic attempts to rationalize your behavior. They don't see your action for what it is. They see it as a mirror reflecting their own fear, hesitation, and lack of initiative. The confusion and noise that surrounds you is not a judgment on your actions, but an admission of their inability to match your courage. They're trying to process the fact that someone did what they only imagined, and in doing so, they confront their own limitations. This reaction also exposes the gap between intention and action. Many people dream, plan, and strategize endlessly, but few execute with the clarity and decisiveness you've demonstrated. Your ability to act disrupts their sense of control over life's outcomes because it reveals that success, growth, and change are not theoretical. They are actions, choices, and discipline. They are left scrambling because the things they've been talking about for years are now happening before their eyes, and they weren't brave enough to make it real. Your courage forces people to reckon with the difference between thought and action. The more authentic, deliberate, and aligned your moves, the louder their confusion becomes, because it confronts them with their own inaction. Your boldness is not just a personal victory. It's a subtle truth-teller, showing who moves, who hesitates, and who will forever be left theorizing while you continue to create realities that others only dream of. Number 13. Your transformation. Interrupted narratives that people were using for their own validation. One of the most overlooked reasons people react so intensely to your evolution is that your transformation disrupts the stories they've built around you. stories that served their own egos and insecurities more than they ever served reality. For years, some people relied on a version of you that fit neatly into their narratives. They needed you to be limited, indecisive, or flawed, so that they could feel smarter, stronger, or more accomplished by comparison. Your sudden growth and clarity shatter that illusion, and that's what makes their confusion and chatter so loud. These narratives aren't just casual assumptions. They are frameworks people use to justify their place in the world. When you acted, progressed, or changed, you pulled the rug out from under those frameworks. Suddenly, their validation, which depended on your stagnation or perceived limitations, no longer exists. They scramble to make sense of your actions because your success, decisiveness, and alignment reveal the emptiness of the measures they relied on to feel important. They weren't just watching your journey, they were trying to define themselves by it, and now the definition no longer fits. Your transformation also forces them to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. It highlights the gap between who they are and who they aspire to be, exposing the compromises, fears, and delays they've tolerated in their own lives. When your evolution is visible, it acts as a mirror, reflecting the ways others have settled or played it safe. That reflection is unsettling, and instead of introspection, many respond with noise, speculation, or attempts to rationalize your behavior. The power of your change lies in its inevitability. You weren't acting to provoke or challenge them. You were simply aligning with your own path, moving in accordance with your own truth. Their discomfort, confusion, and attempts to explain you are merely byproducts of the fact that you no longer exist in the small, manageable version they relied on. Your transformation disrupts the validation they built on your limitations, leaving them exposed, scrambling, and forced to reckon with the reality that you are no longer a measure for anyone else. Number 14. The real reason. Nobody can explain what you did is because it wasn't meant for their understanding. It was meant for your becoming. At the core of your transformation is a truth that most people will never grasp. What you did was never created for their approval, comprehension, or validation. Your actions were never a performance, a message, or an exhibition to be decoded. They were an alignment, a deliberate unfolding of your own evolution, tailored to your growth and nothing else. The reason others can't explain it is simple. It wasn't meant for them. Their confusion isn't a reflection of the act itself. It's a reflection of their perspective, limited by the boundaries of what they're capable of understanding. People are conditioned to interpret everything through their own lens, expecting every action to fit into narratives they can control or comprehend. When someone moves beyond that lens, it triggers a kind of cognitive shock. They search for motives, patterns, or logic that simply don't exist in the way they hope. They try to explain what they see, but the truth is untouchable because it was never intended to be explained. It was intended to be lived fully and unapologetically. Your growth, decisions, and alignment are inherently yours, and that autonomy is what makes you both powerful and confusing to the outside observer. What makes this even more striking is the subtlety of self-mastery. Your transformation likely looked sudden to them, but it was built on layers of unseen effort, reflection, and intention. The outcomes are visible, but the inner work, the discipline, the clarity, the alignment with your own values, remains private. That invisibility amplifies their inability to explain you because they are fixated on the surface without access to the foundation. Ultimately, the confusion around you is a testament to your authenticity. You moved in accordance with your own truth, not anyone else's framework or expectation. That is why your evolution resonates so profoundly, why it leaves people scrambling, whispering, and theorizing. They cannot define it, control it, or even fully understand it, because it was never meant to exist for them. It exists for you, for your becoming, and for the full expression of who you are. Everything else is merely noise trying to interpret something that was never theirs to interpret. The journey you've witnessed isn't just a series of actions. It's a revelation of what it means to rise beyond expectation, to evolve unapologetically, and to move with purpose that defies understanding. Every step, every decision, every shift exposed not just your power, but the hidden truths about the people around you, who truly supports growth, who fears it, and who measures themselves by the limitations they impose on others. Your story is a mirror, reflecting both the courage it takes to break free and the discomfort your authenticity creates in those who are unprepared for it. What stands out most is that your evolution was never meant to be explained, predicted, or contained. It was meant to be lived. The confusion, the whispers, and the attempts to rationalize your moves aren't a testament to their clarity. They're a testament to your unstoppable alignment and the undeniable impact of walking your own path. You didn't just move, you illuminated the invisible, challenged the predictable, and revealed the hidden dynamics that most will never see or understand. And in doing so, you've created a legacy of courage, precision, and unapologetic self-mastery. Let this be a reminder: true transformation doesn't seek validation. It commands presence. It shifts realities, rewrites expectations, and forces the world to catch up to your growth. The reactions of others are mere echoes of what they cannot grasp, while you continue forward, unshaken, undeniable, and fully aligned with who you are meant to be. If this message resonated with you, make sure to join the conversation, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and share this with someone who needs to see the power of unapologetic growth. Let's keep this energy moving and continue elevating ourselves beyond what anyone else thought was possible. Stay awakened, chosen ones, chosen.